As they say, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is the story of a young girl whose simple attempt to open a bank account spirals into a confrontation that reveals a deep-rooted issue of racial bias. When her documents are wrongly questioned, the bank manager calls the police, assuming the worst. But what happens next will change everything. A mother, a powerful CEO, steps in and turns the tables, showing her daughter, and everyone else, that the fight for justice doesn't stop, no matter where you are. Do you believe in standing up against injustice, even when it's uncomfortable? If so, hit that subscribe button and join us in the fight for equality. Tell me in the comments, how far would you go to defend what's right? It was a warm, bustling afternoon when the young girl entered the bank, her heart racing with excitement. She had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. Today, she would finally open her very own savings account. A rite of passage, one her mother had promised her. She had been saving her birthday money, every dollar she earned doing little chores at home, and now she was finally going to make her money work for her. Her deep brown skin glowed under the bright, sterile lights of the bank's polished interior. She was dressed simply, in a white collared shirt and a red and yellow striped tie, paired with a neat maroon skirt. Her hair, dark and curly, was tied in a tidy ponytail that bounced with each step. Despite her outward calm, she felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. The importance of this moment wasn't lost on her, but it wasn't just about the account, it was about the confidence her mother had instilled in her. Her mother, a powerful black CEO, had always told her, never let anyone make you feel small, especially because of who you are. As she approached the counter, her steps were slow but sure. She handed the stack of papers to the bank teller, an older man who nodded approvingly at her. However, as she turned to face the bank manager, her heart skipped a beat. The manager, a tall, sharp-featured woman with blonde hair, was eyeing her with a look that made her uncomfortable. The woman's smile was stiff, forced. The tension in the air was palpable, but the young girl couldn't pinpoint exactly why. "May I help you?" the bank manager asked coldly, her voice not quite as warm as the bank's surroundings. "I'm here to open an account," the girl said quietly, trying her best to keep her voice steady. The manager didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced down at the paperwork before looking back up at the girl, her expression hardening. Something about the situation felt wrong, and for a moment, the young girl felt small, her confidence wavers. It was as if, in this moment, her presence in the bank, a place she should have belonged, was being questioned. Before she could speak again, the manager turned abruptly and picked up the phone, her fingers stiff as she dialed a number. "I think there's something off here. I'll need someone to check," she murmured into the receiver. The young girl stood frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why was this happening? Why was the manager so suspicious? Her stomach churned, but she stayed still, telling herself it was probably just a misunderstanding. But deep inside, she knew, it wasn't. The minutes that followed felt like hours. The young girl stood at the counter, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to steady herself. The sense of unease that had begun in the pit of her stomach was now full-blown anxiety. She looked down at her hands, clenching the paperwork tighter, trying to hold on to the calm her mother always told her to maintain. But no matter how much she tried to remain composed, the tension in the air made her feel small, as if the world around her had turned against her. She stole a glance at the bank manager, who was now pacing behind the counter, muttering to herself. The coldness of her demeanor had deepened into something more unsettling. The girl could hear the phone conversation on the other end, but the words blurred into white noise, drowned by the beating of her heart. She hadn't done anything wrong, so why did the woman look at her as if she was? Then came the heavy footsteps. 2 uniformed police officers entered the lobby, and the sound of their boots hitting the polished floor echoed loudly. One was a black officer, his features kind but stern, and the other was a tall, pale-skinned officer with a look of indifference on his face. The officers exchanged glances as they approached the counter, their expressions unreadable. The young girl's stomach twisted in knots. Her breath caught in her throat, and she instinctively took a step back, feeling the walls closing in on her. The bank manager quickly waved them over, her voice low but urgent as she gestured to the young girl. "I believe there's something wrong with her documents," she said, her words laced with accusation. "I've asked her to stay here, but I'm not sure about her intentions." The officers gave each other another look. The black officer raised an eyebrow, his tone unsure. "What exactly do you suspect, ma'am?" The girl, still holding on to the counter for support, felt her chest tighten. Her breath was shallow now. She wanted to speak, to say that she had every right to be there, but the words wouldn't come. She glanced around, her eyes searching for a sign that someone, anyone, would stand up for her. But everyone seemed frozen in place, silent. The only thing she could hear was her heart, pounding in her ears. A wave of realization hit her. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something more. This was how it felt to be judged, not for who she was, but for the color of her skin. It was happening, and there was nothing she could do but wait for someone to believe in her, to see her for what she was, a child, doing something so simple, so ordinary. But in this moment, that simple act of walking into a bank had become a battle for her dignity. Just as the tension in the room reached its peak, the doors to the bank suddenly swung open. The soft chime of the bell above the door barely registered against the growing anxiety in the air. In walked a woman whose presence seemed to command the entire room. She was tall, her posture straight and unwavering. Her dark brown skin gleamed under the overhead lights, exuding confidence and strength. She had an elegant, professional air about her, her black hair styled in a sleek bun that accentuated the sharpness of her features. Her outfit was impeccable. A tailored gray suit that radiated authority, paired with a crisp white blouse that stood out in the otherwise muted setting. With each step she took, it was clear that she wasn't just any ordinary woman, she was someone who knew her worth and would not tolerate injustice. The young girl, still standing at the counter, felt a wave of relief wash over her as she recognized her mother. Her heart, which had been pounding relentlessly, slowed for the first time in what felt like hours. The woman who walked into the bank wasn't just any mother, she was Maya Washington, a powerful CEO who had built an empire from the ground up, defying all odds. And though the young girl had always admired her strength, it wasn't until that moment that she realized how deeply Maya's presence could cut through the tension of any situation. The bank manager, who had been confidently issuing orders to the officers moments before, froze. Her eyes widened as she took in the woman walking toward her. Maya's gaze was unwavering, her expression calm but filled with an intensity that left no room for excuses. "What's going on here, Karen?" Maya's voice rang out clearly, each word measured, her tone one of authority that commanded the attention of everyone in the room. The bank manager's face shifted from annoyance to confusion, her earlier bravado faltering under the weight of Maya's gaze. I think there's been a mistake," Karen stammered, her words tumbling out as she tried to recover from the shock of seeing someone like Maya walk into her bank. "Your daughter, there were some discrepancies with her documents. I thought she might be." Maya didn't let her finish. "What exactly are you accusing my daughter of?" Her words cut through the air like a blade. There was no room for negotiation in her voice. She wasn't just asking a question, she was asserting her power, demanding accountability. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, their earlier confidence now replaced with hesitation. Maya's gaze shifted to them, and the black officer, who had been silent up until now, spoke first. "We're just here to make sure everything's all right, ma'am." But Maya wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the bank manager, who now looked smaller, less sure of herself. "This is about more than just documents, isn't it, Karen? This is about my daughter being treated differently simply because of her skin color." Karen opened her mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. The air was thick with discomfort as the power dynamics shifted in an instant. Maya didn't need to raise her voice, her presence alone was enough to make the entire room pause, reevaluate, and face the uncomfortable reality of the situation. Behind Maya, the young girl stood a little taller, her body less tense, her fear slowly replaced by something stronger, pride. In that moment, she understood that her mother's strength wasn't just in her title or her success. It was in her ability to face adversity head-on, to take control of a situation, and to teach her daughter the same. Maya's gaze softened as she glanced at her daughter, a silent reassurance passing between them. Whatever had happened in this moment would not define them. What mattered now was how they handled it, together. Maya stood unwavering before the bank manager, her arms crossed, her gaze locked onto Karen, who now looked like a deer caught in headlights. The air was thick with tension, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the space between them. The young girl, who had once felt small and powerless, now stood beside her mother with a sense of quiet strength. Her hands were no longer trembling. Instead, they were firmly clasped by her side, her posture straight, mirroring the calm assurance of her mother. The bank manager's face flushed with discomfort, but she couldn't meet Maya's eyes. She shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot, trying to find some way out of the corner she had painted herself into. "I'm sorry," Karen finally managed, though her voice was barely audible. I shouldn't have assumed." She trailed off, clearly flustered, as though she realized her mistake only now. But Maya wasn't done. "Assume? You didn't just make an assumption, Karen. You made a decision about my daughter's worth. You made a decision based on her skin color, not her character. That's not just a mistake, it's an injustice." Karen opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The police officers remained silent, their earlier indifference now replaced with the awareness that they had been complicit in an act of racial profiling. The young girl, who had stood frozen moments earlier, now found her voice. "Why does this always happen?" she asked, her voice soft but resolute. "Why do I have to prove that I belong here?" Maya's expression softened as she knelt down beside her daughter, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Jada. But you do need to speak up when things are wrong. And right now, what's wrong is standing right in front of us." The bank manager stood speechless, the weight of her actions now fully sinking in. Maya's words, the truth of them, hung in the air. This wasn't just about a mistake in paperwork, it was about a moment of reckoning. Maya stood tall, her presence commanding the room, but it was her daughter, Jada, who truly embodied the moment. With her back straight and eyes fixed forward, Jada felt a quiet strength blossom inside her. She had always been told that she was strong, that she had a voice that mattered, but this was the moment she truly understood what that meant. The bank manager, who had once towered over Jada, now looked small and insignificant in comparison. Her face was flushed with shame, and her eyes darted nervously as she tried to collect herself. The two police officers stood awkwardly, unsure of how to proceed, their earlier confidence now replaced with the realization of how deeply they had misjudged the situation. Maya turned to the officers, her tone calm yet firm. "You have a duty to uphold justice, not to perpetuate bias. It's time to step back and see this for what it is." She glanced at Jada, her eyes softening as she continued, "I've raised my daughter to be strong, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost. And I will always stand beside her in that fight." The black officer gave a subtle nod, acknowledging the injustice in the room, while the white officer shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to avoid further confrontation. Neither spoke. Karen, still standing behind the counter, opened her mouth to apologize, but Maya raised a hand to stop her. "Your apology doesn't change the damage, Karen," she said firmly. "But I hope you'll learn something from today. This doesn't just happen to my daughter, it happens to many others who don't have the means to fight back. But I won't stand by and let this slide." The scene was quiet for a moment, the weight of Maya's words sinking in. Slowly, Jada's nervousness melted away, replaced by a sense of quiet pride. She had seen her mother fight for her rights countless times before, but now, Jada understood the full extent of that fight. As they left the bank, mother and daughter walked side by side, their heads held high. The CEO's stride was powerful, and the young girl's steps matched her own. They had faced adversity, confronted injustice, and stood tall in the face of it. This was just one battle in a long war, one that they would continue to fight together.